Joining me now to react, Arizona Congressman and gubernatorial candidate there in Arizona, Congressman Andy Biggs. Look, you're a fiscal conservative. That's pretty well documented. You're also on the Freedom Caucus. What's your reaction to what Chip Roy from Texas is saying about this bill and its status right now?
I think everybody is actually trying to get to yes, Jason. They want to get to yes. You've got problems all across the board in the Republican conference. So you got the SALT guys that want a whole lot more money for SALT. By the way, that what they're proposing is somewhere north of $300 billion over 10 years. And what Chip and those guys are asking for, and it's not unreasonable, is to say, look, there should be some work requirements on people who are getting Medicaid, right? So if you're an able-bodied person, you shouldn't be getting free Medicaid. You should at least have to work. And guess what the number is on that? Oddly enough, it's somewhere north of $300 billion over 10 years if those people have to work to get the money. So it's a big, beautiful bill, but it unfortunately has a few blemishes right now that I think everybody's trying to work to get over.
I do think it's a natural part of the process. I mean, this is the give and take. This is what members of Congress are actually supposed to do. But I do think the president's going to have to come in because ultimately this is a team sport and you're going to have to get everybody over the line. I have little understanding on, a great deal of understanding, but a great deal of frustration on the whole idea and the notion that we out west in the Intermountain West should be supplementing the big spending states like New York for what they're doing. I don't understand why and how you can justify giving them more of a tax break and putting that on the backs of people who live in Arizona or Utah or Nevada or wherever you might live.
Yeah, you're 100% right. I mean, think about that. Actually, what you're doing is secondarily, you're asking citizens of Utah or Arizona or anywhere in the country to actually pay for the Democrat hard left programs of New York or New Jersey or Illinois or even California. And that's what the SALT people are asking for. And in the current bill, they get up to $30,000 of exemption that would be subsidized by everybody else in the country. And they don't like that.
Yeah, no, look, yeah. There are a few things that have to happen. If you're going to make adjustments, do them now, not in 2029. SALT, I'm sorry, I don't think we have the money to do that sort of thing. And to the work requirements and making sure that people here illegally don't get it, this is why I think we're actually really close to getting this done. All right, topic number 2, Congressman. Moody's just this afternoon has cut the U.S. credit rating by 1 notch to AA1 as opposed to a AAA rating, citing government debt and interest payments. The move means no major credit rating agency has the United States at the highest possible rating. It makes loaning money and getting money that much more expensive.
Yeah, and what that means, Jason, is that that's going to add to our national debt if the interest rate pops up a little bit. Why is that? That's because right now we're spending over $1 trillion a year on interest alone. And that's when you're spending $7.2 trillion a year, that's a pretty hefty portion of that. And when you read what they said, what Moody's said is they're basically getting at the same thing you and I are kind of talking about, is that there needs to be some kind of stabilization plan to actually reduce the structural deficit, which is $2 trillion plus a year, and the national debt. So this is actually fairly timely with the topic you and I have been talking about.
No, this is the consequence of years of neglect that I think House Republicans, Senate Republicans, and the President Trump are trying to deal with it now. Next topic, Congressman, breaking today, out today on the Washington Examiner, the House Oversight Committee Chairman James Comer announcing that he's going to expand the investigation on the use of President Biden with the autopen. And if you recall, a lot of this was revealed by the oversight project that came out. But where do you see this going? Chairman Comer is adamant in getting at who was actually operating that autopen.
Yeah, and as you're a former chair of oversight, so you know how this goes. We keep getting more and more information, and so we now think we know who the the person was who was operating the autopen. Now the next step is who authorized it. And when you think about it, all the information that's come out in the last 2 weeks about Joe Biden's documented decline, you and I saw it. We were talking about it. Most Americans saw it, but the media was covering it up and his administration was covering it up. So if he did have this cognitive decline, you got to know who authorized this. And that would be, it seems to me, probably a criminal act, because you've committed some kind of fraud here. And what does this go to? A blanket set of pardons, which is what the Democrats have been criticizing President Trump for.
Yeah, if you have the use of the autopen, that is the most powerful thing, and it does require, I think, a congressional investigation. All right, Congressman, stay right there. We want to get your reaction to this story. The House Judiciary Committee diving into allegations that Pfizer delayed COVID vaccine testing results back in 2020. Happened to be an election year. In an effort to perhaps, the allegation is, the question mark is, did they influence a presidential election? Our own Grady Trimble is at Capitol Hill with more. Grady.
Hey, Jason, the House Judiciary Committee is looking into the claims of a former Pfizer scientist. So after President Trump won the 2024 election, this former Pfizer scientist, then working at a different company, GSK, asked his employer if they could move him out of the country out of fear that Republicans would investigate his role in developing the COVID-19 vaccine 4 years prior. Specifically, the committee alleges that the scientist, Dr. Philip Dormitzer, told employees at his next job after Pfizer at GSK that when he worked at Pfizer in late 2020, quote, the three most senior people in Pfizer research and development were involved in a decision to deliberately slow down clinical testing so that it would not be complete prior to the results of the presidential election that year.
This is someone working with the government to approve a vaccine who's holding results until after an election, political influence. And at the time, remember the context, it was a scramble to get this vaccine. President Trump was working so hard to get it approved as emergency use authorization for the vaccine. All that's troubling because that's information, if it was there before the election, should have been made public.
Pfizer tells Fox Business it'll respond directly to the committee and that the vaccine development process was driven by science. It goes on to say, we have consistently and transparently reiterated the facts and the timeline of the tireless work of scientists, regulators, and thousands of clinical trial volunteers who made the vaccine possible. Theories to the contrary are simply untrue and being manufactured. Nonetheless, the Judiciary Committee, Jason, is asking for a response from both Dr. Dormitzer, the scientist in question, as well as Pfizer's CEO by the end of this month. We'll keep you posted on any developments. Jason?
Grady Trimble there on Capitol Hill. Thank you. All right, let's go back to Congressman Biggs, who sits not only on the Oversight Committee working on that autopen issue, but you're also on the House Judiciary Committee, who's also going to start diving into this. What do we know today? We heard Congressman Jim Jordan, the chairman there, but where is this going?
Well, this is going to go in where we're going to have Pfizer in and we're going to have Dormitzer in, because if these allegations are true, they are so amazingly serious. I mean, I can't tell you. It is, if it's true, I mean, what Dormitzer said, and he's saying now, well, maybe that was taken out of context. It's hard to see how any other context would work, but with that context, it looks like Pfizer was trying to manipulate the election. And if you're trying to manipulate the election like that, isn't it funny that Democrats are always claiming somebody else is trying to manipulate it, and yet we find out that there may be people manipulating it that are on the side of the left. And we need to get to the bottom of that for sure, because look, Jason, in a constitutional republic, if you can't trust your election, and we've got a lot of people who don't trust our elections anymore, then you have a serious problem on your hands.
Yes, you do. Congressman Andy Biggs from Arizona. And if, by the way, you have any questions about how conservative Andy Biggs is, just look at the way he decorates his office. Couldn't be more conservative than that, I can tell you. Congressman Andy Biggs from Arizona, thank you so much for joining us tonight on The Bottom Line.
Thanks, Jason.